Zombie infections in our favorite character's universe aren't new in pop culture. The infected have been around since Night of the Living Dead, and was later popularized by the 2002 movie 28 Days Later and the 2004 movie Dawn of the Dead. Since then, the abundance of zombie media has been rich to the point where it's a whole subgenre of horror itself. And with the demand of more zombie media, it was inevitable for Marvel and DC to hop on the undead craze. The most well-known from the two are the cult classic Marvel Zombies, a world where the Century is infected with a zombie plague and is unleashed to the Marvel Universe, infecting our favorite heroes and villains. Recently, DC has finally caught up with the zombie craze with Deceased. Similar concept to Marvel Zombies, but instead of the traditional virus, this infection is a modified version of the anti-life equation, shoved into the cyborg system, infecting everyone that stares at a screen. Basically a digital virus that can infect humans via the internet or the traditional way. But I ain't here to talk about the juggernauts, okay? Deep within the belly of the internet, a subgenre of the subgenre has been making its rounds on TikTok and YouTube. A subgenre of zombie infection that includes our favorite childhood cartoons has been nothing short of a forest fire that has the internet wrapped around its finger. These are categorized as Infection Alternate Universes, or AUs as my generation loves to call them. Hundreds of Infection AUs have been made since its conception. But when did it all start? Why is it so addictive to the point where as soon as we see one on our For You page, we can't help but read every little detail that's presented? In today's cult meeting, we are going to be discussing the 4 most popular Infection AUs in the genre, drawing similarities they have and breaking down the formula of what makes these stories so entertaining. Now, I'm going to be doing something different with this video. We're going to be going the Roanoke gaming route with this one, with the story being first condensed into short digestible bites, and we'll be breaking down what makes these AUs so entertaining. So if you want to skip to the breakdown, the timestamp is up on screen, or you can skip via the chapters. The SpongeBob AU is what I believe is what kicked all of this off. While not technically a zombie infection AU, this universe mostly still consists of an infection of sorts. In this universe, Patrick becomes self-aware of what the Krabby Patties are really made of, after eating an undercooked Krabby Patty. The first to fall victim to the infection is his best friend, SpongeBob. Yep, our boy doesn't make it past the vector of this infection. After that, Patrick goes on to terrorize the entire city of Bikini Bottom. You're probably thinking, doesn't SpongeBob have supers in their world? Where's Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy? Well, come to find out, they were watching all of this from their Mermaid Man cave and were getting ready to throw hands with the starfish. But because the plot demanded, the starfish that lets Mermaid Man breathe underwater and gives him his powers becomes an infected, mutating starfish that kills him, leaving Barnacle Boy to fight these creatures alone. Sandy tries to take care of Patrick herself, but ends up making the situation worse. Not a lot of people know this, but sea stars are known to multiply when their bodies are cut into pieces, as long as their central mass isn't damaged. Meaning Sandy cutting Patrick in half without damaging his main brain made 2 infected starfish to worry about instead of 1. Heading to the Krusty Krab and barricading the restaurant, Sandy gets abducted by Patrick. As Mr. Krabs squares up with the mutant starfish, here we find out how this outbreak started in the first place. Turns out Mr. Krabs stole a piece of Patrick's arm and waited for it to regenerate. From there, the Krabby Patties were made in high production rates, as this Patrick Sea Star has now become the source of the meat of the patties. After eating an undercooked Krabby Patty, Patrick gains the memories of this starfish, finding out the truth behind Mr. Krabs' secret formula. After Mr. Krabs has been taken care of, turns out Sandy survives all of this. Currently being eaten by Patrick, she lets out shots. Yep, Sandy's strapped, bro, cause she's from Texas. Now, I'm not gonna go through the whole series, so let me just skip forward just a little bit. Returning to the Krusty Krab with Squidward, we find out Krabs is infected with a chest-burster starfish. This was accomplished by force-feeding Mr. Krabs a raw Krabby Patty. Before this, we see the infected starfish Imperfect selling all of the people in Bikini Bottom. We can assume that each of these starfish were either duplicates of the original Patrick or, like what we saw with crabs, adult chest bursters. After uniting with Squidward, they come face to face with another Patrick. After some insults were exchanged, Squidward mutates himself. This evolves into a Kaiju v Starfish fight, which then evolves into a Kaiju v Kaiju fight. I won't go through the whole movie as this would take up too much of our time, but all you need to know is lives were lost, risks were taken, and eventually SpongeBob comes back to life after regenerating from a single piece of himself on Patrick. The best friends fight it out as Mrs. Puff and the rest of the gang crack open Mount Bikini Bottom and throws the tortured one into the lava pool, rescuing SpongeBob. And after Patrick realizes he had no idea on what he was doing, the gang reunites and the city starts to rebuild. Now, there's a lot to this AU than what a lot of people make it out to be, so if you want a separate video on the Bikini Bottom horror movie, be sure to leave a comment letting me know, and if this gets video to say 2,000 likes, I'll most likely cover it in a separate video. Now, the Bikini Bottom horror was the launching pad that this subgenre needed to get off their feet. Originally from TikTok, that was later made into an animated movie, this launched the subgenre of horror we all know and love. And I believe the next AU that we're going to be talking about is what I believe solidified the subgenre in pop culture. Now, there are a lot of MLP infections out there, like the Cookie Infection AU, the Skinwalker Virus AU, but let's keep it to the OG. Now, normally I would cover a story that can be traced back to an original vector of this infection, but I can't find the one that I watched way back in 2024, I think it was, or 2023. But thank God there's another one that's similar enough to what I did find. We start off with Applejack and Rarity coming to Twilight for help with Applejack's injuries. As we do pan over to Twilight, we notice that she isn't the normal cartoonish form that we know. Instead, she looks more deformed, much larger than everyone else. Rarity seems very concerned at first, but then looking over to Applejack, she too is infected. Running to Fluttershy's home, she's let in. After finding out Rarity has also now been infected, knowing she doesn't have much time, Fluttershy offers a drink of apple cider. Rarity turns down the offer as she believes that this is the cause of the whole infection in the first place. But we then find out Fluttershy drank some and wasn't affected at all. And we're going to find out why that is later in the series. After a knock at the door, well, shit, they've been discovered. Running again, this time to Zecora, if I'm correct. They consult her on what's going on in the village and how Fluttershy wasn't affected after drinking apple cider. After taking a sample of her blood, we find out Fluttershy actually has some bat blood. Not just any kind of bat blood. Vampire fruit bat blood. Now, I ain't no MLP fan, so I don't know if this is already well established in the lore or not, but at least now we know that what could possibly cause this infection was a fruit bat, a vampire fruit bat. Now, if you're familiar with some vampire folklore, some believe that vamps can not only turn others into vampires, but they can also control the undead. Meaning this does align with an infection, but finding out that Fluttershy could almost likely be the cure for the whole thing by biting people as vampires, they get a surprise visit from Twilight. But surprisingly, she whispers for help. We discover that they are still conscious in there. They're just infected. After she tries to eat Rarity, Twilight steps on a bunny, which triggers the Doom guy in Fluttershy, leading her to bite Twi. After being brought to Princess Celestia, they develop a cure for the zombie infection. Everyone is reunited after the infection, but not everyone can take the cure and not everyone survived the outbreak. This infection highlights the possibility of some characters being outright immune to infections they are presented with and can straight up be cured if developed enough. But what I find most interesting is that the next infection we come across involves how it can actually jump species. The Trills infection is one of the more interesting infections out there among the rest. Similarly to the MLP infection, this infection comes in different flavors. However, the most intriguing and, dare I say, definitive infection has to be the red glitters infection. As you all know, glitter tends to get everywhere, and this infection heavily relies on that. The story begins with Poppy being visited by Creek, who looks way more disfigured than what we would hope, making him the vector of this infection. We later see that he has infected a chef orc, or was it an ogre? I really don't remember because I don't remember the Trolls movie that much, so let's just call them Billies from here on out. Creek seemingly infects the chef Billy with what we can assume is his glitter. Poppy runs away from said Billy, diving off a cliff to escape. Emerging on the other side of the island, she hears a familiar melody, but this time, it seems distorted. Chaz, the Pied Piper of the Trolls universe, is now one of the infected. He uses his clarinet to draw Poppy in, but she gets him with a stake to the heart. Hey, I mean, if it works on vampires, it could work on infected. Just saying, just as weak in this universe, it seems. To be completely fair, I believe this infection lays more on the Marvel zombie virus more than anything, but moving on. We now cut to King Peppy being dissected in the Billy lab, where they come to find the organs are now replaced with nothing but glitter. And as stated before, glitter gets everywhere. This later infects one of the surgeons performing the autopsy, as we now cut to Branch in search of Poppy. He has since returned to his bunker when he later hears a familiar voice. Believing it to be Poppy, he gets stopped before getting lured in by a troll that can mimic voices. Branch then goes nuclear by letting off fireworks in the wilderness, making as much noise as possible to not only try and get the infected to his bunker, but to hopefully let Poppy know that he is still alive. In the final episode, we find out that Branch has gone full pyro on these fools and burned every infected he comes across. There hasn't been an update to the series as of late, but with this we can see how these infections can vary from one species to another. Now, the final infection, we find out what could happen to a species when it gets a hold of a race that can literally possess as a threat to an entire village. And it's actually one of the most recent additions to the zombie infections. Being the most recent zombie infection AU, this infection mostly circulates around the dragons. It started out with the introduction to the phases of the infection. Famous dragons are being infected and subdued in ways that would traumatize kids if they were ever seen unsupervised. It seems a good majority of the main cast of the dragons seems unharmed, excluding Barf and Belch. But in the following episodes, we find out what happened to Toothless and Hiccup, and it's nothing short of horrific. Our beloved trio come across an infected dragon, and what I assume is an infected fish. After a while, Astrid and Hiccup's mother find him by a campfire on his own. Traumatized, we learn that Toothless is now infected. Hiccup says no blade can kill that dragon anymore, meaning this mutation intends to keep their host alive as much as possible. The only reason why he's still alive is my goat from the animated series, Deacon, got there just in time to save Hiccup. After hearing a noise, Toothless strikes again, only this time, he has come to finish the job. We then get more information about the infection, and we notice that the virus has now spread to other dragons. At the very end of the episode, we see that not only has the dragon virus spread to other dragons, but we find out that it is now mutating to now infect humans. By the looks of it, it's already infected a Viking. The horrific mutations seem to be caused by what I can assume is a tapeworm that was most likely found in these fish that the dragons ate. The more they ate, the more eggs that were laid in their blood. The last episode, at the time of writing this episode, are the twins. The twins have taken it the harshest. With Roughnut not being the same since Barf was taken care of, they still take care of Belch, but it just isn't the same. Toughnut is doing his best to take care of her and Belch, but it's obvious that it's taking a toll on him and his sister. Now, going back to the previous episodes, we can see that the infected can not only infect dragons, but the Vikings can also catch this virus. Imagine what this could do if a Red Death or an Alpha was still alive. Thank God they're both extinct in canon. Now, I know these are much shorter than you would like it to be, but I don't want to bore all of you with an hour-long documentary breaking down every single one of these AUs piece by piece in one go. So if you'd like me to explore these kinds of universe more, be sure to show this video some love by subscribing and leaving a like, as they will keep you up to date on when I upload. Now, looking at all four of these infections, we see that there are three recurring things that we have to consider in making an AU that involves a zombie infection, and how it keeps us entertained. The first one is the most obvious one, and I have stated a number of times in this video. May it be the main character of the show or film, or the fan favorite. This is how the Infection AU gets you hooked. By infecting a favorite character or the main cast, you are instantly drawn to whatever comes next. Seeing one of your favorite characters getting infected makes you hold out hope that there could be a cure to this infection, or hope that their death comes swiftly. The emotional hook that these Infection AUs keep the viewers enticed on how it all turns out, and wanting more of what they have to offer. Now, with the Vector in mind, considering they are the main cast, we can then assume that the other main cast members come to the aid of the infected, not only to be caught in the crossfire in the infection themselves. For instance, Mr. Krabs, after having his limbs cut off, the gang find him helpless on the floor, only to find out he's infected by a starburster, a starfish chestburster that later becomes the catalyst of waking the tortured one. Or Rarity, who gets bit after an encounter with Twilight and Applejack. Sure, her infection is much slower than the other Infection AUs, but we start to see a pattern in these AUs. As soon as the main character or any of the main cast either get fully infected or dwindled in numbers, the side cast normally take over to try and assist the remaining main characters in finding a cure, or at best finding a way to get rid of these infected so it does not spread to the outside world and to the rest of the universe. Which brings us to our second talking point of the formula. I know this was already said in the first part, but having an emotional attachment to an infected is the most effective way to get viewers hooked on the show. The instance of this is when a favorite character dies after the Vector starts spreading with the virus, like when Batman dies in the first issue of Deceased. That was fucked up, knowing that this man was so prepared for everything except the zombie apocalypse, but that's what hooked us all in. Seeing a pillar of the universe fall to something that they could have been prepared for keeps us all looking. begging for the next installment or whatever is going to happen next. This is mostly because we want to see how the rest of the cast will deal with the issue without the smartest one in the group. We formed a bond with these characters so much where it breaks our hearts seeing one of the most iconic and fan favorite character die to a simple infection. When they study the infection more, they come to learn the effects of each infection have on the species. Like How to Train Your Dragon. The stages of the infection are displayed in almost all of the Infection AUs, mostly illustrated with a fan favorite character going through the stages. Not only does this relay the information to us viewers on what it looks like out there, but by using a recognizable face, it draws more concern to the matter more than if it was just a random dude showing these symptoms. Knowing the stakes of the infection, we are left glued to our seats to figure out who's infected, who isn't, and who's next. Which brings us to our final talking point of this video. The abundance of body horror in all of these AUs is absurd. Ponies morphing into massive abominations infected by a virus induced by a vampire bat and apple cider, or dragons mutating into disgusting shells of themselves, losing some parts of their body in exchange for a larger and much more horrific figure. This is what draws us in the most. The morbid curiosity of humanity has been prevalent throughout history, like how we used to watch public executions and gladiator fights, or like how we have people who major in history teaching us about the horrors of war, mythology, and how there is an abundance of cryptids that lay beneath the soil of our planet, in our oceans, and in the deepest parts of the forest. True crime stories, creepypastas, and horror movies alike feed the itch at the back of our brain that we crave so much. Some of us like to believe that we hate the feeling of being scared and uneasy. But deep in our brains, when something horrific happens, or when being told, we can't help but keep looking and listening into what is happening. The gore and the body horror in these AUs fully acknowledge what this morbid curiosity is, and it feeds into that, mutating childhood favorites into these horrific creatures. We try to look away, but we just can't help ourselves. This has been evident in another genre of horror that has been made popular by the FNAF franchise, mascot horror. There's something about seeing our childhood characters and shows getting morphed into these things that would normally traumatize us as children just intriguing us. Seeing our favorite characters that seethes of innocence becoming a harbinger of an infection has drawn more eyes than the original shows. And by the looks of it, these AUs, these infections, show no signs of slowing down, thus making it a completely new subgenre of zombie horror. With every new form of show or animation the industry comes out with, within a short few weeks of popularization, you can best believe there's a zombie infection of that show. So, the next time that morbid curiosity hits you, don't be afraid to look up your favorite tune and see how morbid that show can really get, and how your favorite childhood tune could survive a zombie apocalypse. But that's all I got for you in today's episode. What are your thoughts? Do you want to see me cover each individual AU? Let me know down in the comments. Now, we're officially switching to 2 videos a month so I can produce more quality content like this, because let me tell you, this took a lot of work. I also found out that YouTube takes 45% of your ad revenue, so if you'd like to support the channel more, go check out our coffee. I'll leave it in the description to have your name show up in the cast list like this. But if you enjoyed this kind of content, leaving a like would be awesome as it gets the video out there, and subscribing will help the channel grow as we are growers and not showers. That's all from your boy. I hope you have a wonderful day, and in case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.